In remote country, danger rarely announces itself. It arrives through small conditions aligning: fog that shortens visibility, a scent that travels farther than expected, a moment of noise that masks heavy movement. When those pieces line up, outcomes can shift in seconds. In this video, we'll examine 6 wildlife encounters, measured, reconstructed, and explained with clear lessons, so you can see the common risk factors that turn ordinary travel into a survival problem. Just outside the Aleutian Range in southwest Alaska, the ground sits low and wet, where alder thickets meet gravel roads and tide-influenced sloughs. In late autumn, daylight shortens fast, and the air carries the smell of salt, diesel, and fish waste from small harbors. On October 28, 2023, at 6:12 p.m., the temperature hovered near -1 degree Celsius, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, as Mara Ellingson, 27, and Derek Cho, 31, finished a volunteer shift at a community freezer. They were not tourists. They lived nearby, worked seasonal jobs, and treated the shoreline like a working place, not a scenic one. A wind-driven rain had just moved through, leaving puddles on the packed road and a dull shine on everything metal. The vulnerability that evening was ordinary and overlooked. A power outage had shut down the town's compacted trash station for 2 days. Bags piled up behind a chain-link fence, fish trimmings, cardboard, and food scraps warmed slightly under tarps and gave off a steady odor that drifted toward the brush line. Mara and Derek drove a short bed pickup to drop off donated pallets. They parked about 35 meters from the fenced pile under a single security light that flickered when the generator coughed. They could hear the distant hum of the harbor cranes, but the immediate area was quiet. No dogs barking, no traffic, no voices. That quiet mattered. A large coastal brown bear, an adult male, roughly 320 to 360 kilograms, 700 to 800 pounds, by later track measurement, had been seen in the area twice that week. The bear's behavior pattern was consistent with seasonal urgency, late fall calories, reduced natural forage, and repeated exposure to human scent near waste. The trigger was not dramatic. Derek opened the truck's back door, and a bag of snacks fell onto damp gravel. The smell of jerky and sweet bread joined the larger waste odor, sharpening into a clear beacon. From the alder edge, the bear rose, first a pale shape, then mass. It did not charge immediately. It walked in with a steady, purposeful gait, closing distance from about 60 meters to 25 in less than half a minute. Mara saw it first because the flickering lamp briefly lit the bear's shoulder hump. Derek shouted once, loud and flat. Mara hit the truck's panic button, and the horn began to pulse. The sound helped, but it did not stop the approach. The bear bellowed, more breath than roar, and accelerated, covering the last stretch quickly. The attack beat lasted approximately 40 to 50 seconds. Derek moved toward the driver's door. Mara, already closer, got it open. The bear swatted the tailgate, denting it inward with a single strike, then pivoted toward movement at the cab. Mara slammed her door. The bear's claws scraped the side panel with a metallic screech. Derek dove into the passenger seat as the animal's weight rocked the truck. Inside, they stayed low. Derek kept both hands over the ignition and started the engine on the second turn. The truck lurched forward. The bear followed for a few steps, then stopped and turned back toward the fence line, drawn to the larger, steadier food source. Minutes later, lights appeared as 2 neighbors arrived in another vehicle. A call went out to local wildlife officers. No one was physically injured, but both Mara and Derek shook hard with adrenaline and cold. The official analysis the next day was blunt. The outage had created an attractant hotspot. Officers ordered the waste moved into sealed containers, and the town added temporary floodlights and a schedule for removal. Residents were reminded to avoid the area at dusk and to keep food locked down even for quick stops. When attractants accumulate and visibility is poor, distance disappears faster than people expect. Avoid routine stops near waste sites, especially at dusk. The next story shows what happens when the confined space isn't a truck. It's open terrain with only one direction to run. In the northern Rockies, backcountry airstrips sit like narrow scars in the forest. Flat grass corridors cut through lodgepole pine where wind can shift quickly and sound carries strangely. On June 6, 2024, at 5:47 a.m., Evan Rios, 38, a bush pilot, landed a small single-engine plane at an unimproved strip in western Wyoming to pick up a survey team. The morning was clear but cold for early summer, about 4 degrees Celsius, 39 degrees Fahrenheit, with ground fog pooled in low hollows. Evan had flown these routes for years. He knew that early hours reduced turbulence and increased visibility, usually a benefit. That morning, fog changed the equation. It muted distance and hid movement at the brush line. 2 passengers waited near a stack of gear: Leah Grant, 33, a forestry technician, and Noah Patel, 29, a graduate researcher. Their equipment included hard cases, rolled maps, and a cooler meant for samples. The cooler, however, had previously held smoked meat from the prior day. The lid was shut, but the smell was still present in the hinges and gasket. The animal context was consistent with spring to summer transition. A grizzly bear, likely a subadult male, estimated 180 to 220 kilograms, 400 to 485 pounds. Rangers later noted recent reports of a bear using the drainage to travel between berry patches and carcass sites. In early morning, bears move with purpose. The trigger was a small mistake, made under routine pressure. Evan stepped out, unlatched the cargo hatch, and Leah set the cooler on grass about 10 meters from the plane's tail to free her hands. Fog drifted in thin sheets across the strip, and the smell traveled low and steady. The bear appeared at roughly 35 meters, walking out of the trees with head down, following scent like a line. Evan's first move was correct. He raised his arms to appear larger and shouted. Noah grabbed a metal case and banged it twice, creating sharp metallic clanging. For a second the bear paused, ears forward, body angled. Then it broke into a fast lope, not a full sprint, covering ground with efficient power. The attack beat was measured later at about 90 seconds, but it felt shorter. Leah ran toward the plane's open side door. Evan pivoted to slam it, but Noah was still outside, frozen between the bear and the fuselage. Evan grabbed a flare from the cockpit emergency kit and fired it into the grass a few meters in front of the bear. The flare hissed and spit sparks, creating a bright barrier. The bear swerved, startled by heat and light, then circled wide. It did not flee completely. It moved to the cooler, hooked it with claws, and dragged it about 6 meters toward the brush. Plastic cracked. The lid popped. The smell intensified instantly. Evan took that moment to start the engine and roll forward, using the plane's prop wash and noise to widen distance. Leah and Noah got inside, pulling the door shut. The bear, now focused on the cooler, stayed down, tearing at it rather than pursuing the aircraft. They lifted off within minutes. At the nearest ranger station, staff documented the event and later retrieved debris from the strip. Officials concluded the attractant was the decisive factor and noted the fog likely reduced the bear's caution. The strip was temporarily closed, and signage was updated to require all food-scented items to remain sealed in odor-resistant containers stored inside vehicles or aircraft, not staged on open ground. In low visibility, don't stage anything that smells. Keep scented items inside hard barriers and treat fog like a proximity multiplier. The next encounter isn't about a bear at all. It's about speed, human speed, and how it can trigger a predator's chase response. Southern Utah's canyon country can look open and forgiving from a distance. Up close, it's a maze of slick rock shelves, juniper pockets, and narrow washes where visibility collapses behind bends and boulders. On April 14, 2025, at 7:09 a.m., the temperature was 9 degrees Celsius, 48 degrees Fahrenheit, with a dry wind. Kieran Moss, 26, a trail runner, started a loop along a popular ridgeline path outside a small desert town. He ran early to avoid heat and crowds. He carried a minimal pack, water, a light jacket, and a small emergency whistle. The vulnerability on that route is not isolation. People do use it. The vulnerability is the terrain's short sightlines. A runner can move fast enough to surprise wildlife at close range, and the sound of footfalls on rock doesn't travel like it does on dirt. Kieran was about 2.3 kilometers into the loop when he rounded a bend that cut between boulders. He didn't see the animal at first. He saw a flick of movement, tan against tan, then a long tail. A mountain lion, likely an adult female in the 45 to 55 kilogram, 100 to 120 pound range, was crouched in a shadowed pocket, possibly watching the wash below for rabbits. The lion's behavior wasn't aggressive in the human sense. It was predatory, keyed to motion. The trigger was immediate. Kieran's running stride, combined with sudden proximity. The lion sprang forward in a short burst, closing to within 8 to 10 meters in seconds. Kieran heard the scrape of claws on rock and turned to see the cat moving low, head level, eyes fixed. The attack escalation here was a chase rather than contact. Kieran stopped running, critical, and faced the lion. He raised his arms, made himself tall, and shouted in a steady voice. The lion did not retreat. It circled to his left, using boulders as cover, testing distance. The measured duration of this standoff was about 3 minutes. Kieran backed slowly toward a more open shelf where he could see both sides. He kept eye contact without crouching. When the lion stepped forward again, he blasted his whistle, sharp, loud, and unnatural in that quiet canyon. A second hiker appeared on the trail behind him, drawn by the sound. The presence of another human changed the cat's calculus. The lion paused, then backed into the juniper line and vanished with a smooth, controlled withdrawal. Kieran's resolution was not a heroic escape. It was disciplined behavior under stress. He and the other hiker walked together to the trailhead, scanning the brush. No one was injured, but the psychological impact was real. A heightened awareness of how quickly a quiet place can become a hunting ground. Park staff later posted advisories reminding runners not to use earbuds on narrow trails to avoid dawn and dusk in lion habitat and to carry a whistle or deterrent. Rangers noted that spring can increase sightings as young prey animals move and lions adjust hunting patterns. When speed triggers pursuit, stop running, face the animal, and create space. Movement can be the invitation. The next story shifts from wilderness to a place people assume is safe, a residential edge where wild animals learn routines. The foothills west of Boulder, Colorado, blur into neighborhoods where open space corridors run behind back fences. At night, trash bins and pet food become an informal feeding system for animals that learn quickly. On September 2, 2024, at 10:38 p.m., it was 16 degrees Celsius, 61 degrees Fahrenheit, and quiet in a cul-de-sac that backed onto a greenbelt. Renee Caldwell, 44, a nurse finishing a late shift, returned home and parked in her driveway. Her husband, Mark, had left the garage door cracked open earlier while moving boxes. The vulnerability here wasn't deep wilderness, it was access. A partially open garage becomes a sheltered space that smells like stored snacks, cleaning chemicals, and sometimes pet food. Renee's dog, a medium-sized mixed breed named Juno, slipped out ahead of her and trotted into the garage. Renee followed, phone in one hand, keys in the other. She saw the shape at the back only when her headlights caught it. A black bear, estimated 90 to 110 kilograms, 200 to 240 pounds, standing near a shelf where a bag of birdseed had been chewed. The bear's behavior was food-driven, not defensive. It had likely entered quietly, following scent from the greenbelt. The trigger was Juno's sudden bark and forward movement. The bear snapped its head up and swatted reflexively. The contact beat was brief, under 20 seconds, but violent enough to matter. Juno yelped and scrambled back, sliding on concrete. Renee jerked the door button, trying to close the garage, but the bear was between her and the wall controls. She grabbed a metal broom handle and struck it against a ladder, creating loud, repetitive clanging. Mark heard the noise from inside and hit the car alarm key fob, adding horn pulses to the chaos. The bear turned in a tight circle, uncertain, then rushed past the opening and out into the yard, knocking a trash can aside. Renee pulled Juno inside and shut the interior door. Juno had superficial cuts and bruising, but no major injuries. Renee had no physical injuries, but she described later a hollow feeling that persisted for weeks, an aftershock that came with every garage creak at night. Wildlife officers responded the next day. They documented torn birdseed, claw marks on the lower garage frame, and paw prints in dust near stored camping supplies. Officials concluded the attractant chain was clear, accessible seed, open entry, and a learned corridor behind the houses. They advised immediate changes: secure birdseed in bear-resistant containers, keep garage doors closed, remove outdoor pet food, and install motion-activated lighting. On the wildlife edge, your home can become an attractant site. Close access points and lock down small food sources like seed and trash. The next encounter takes us back to true isolation, where help exists, but only at the speed of radios and weather. The foothills west of Boulder, Colorado, blur into neighborhoods where open space corridors run behind back fences. At night, trash bins and pet food become an informal feeding system for animals that learn quickly. On September 2, 2024, at 10:38 p.m., it was 16 degrees Celsius, 61 degrees Fahrenheit, and quiet in a cul-de-sac that backed onto a greenbelt. Renee Caldwell, 44, a nurse finishing a late shift, returned home and parked in her driveway. Her husband, Mark, had left the garage door cracked open earlier while moving boxes. The vulnerability here wasn't deep wilderness, it was access. A partially open garage becomes a sheltered space that smells like stored snacks, cleaning chemicals, and sometimes pet food. Renee's dog, a medium-sized mixed breed named Juno, slipped out ahead of her and trotted into the garage. Renee followed, phone in one hand, keys in the other. She saw the shape at the back only when her headlights caught it. A black bear, estimated 90 to 110 kilograms, 200 to 240 pounds, standing near a shelf where a bag of birdseed had been chewed. The bear's behavior was food-driven, not defensive. It had likely entered quietly, following scent from the greenbelt. The trigger was Juno's sudden bark and forward movement. The bear snapped its head up and swatted reflexively. The contact beat was brief, under 20 seconds, but violent enough to matter. Juno yelped and scrambled back, sliding on concrete. Renee jerked the door button, trying to close the garage, but the bear was between her and the wall controls. She grabbed a metal broom handle and struck it against a ladder, creating loud, repetitive clanging. Mark heard the noise from inside and hit the car alarm key fob, adding horn pulses to the chaos. The bear turned in a tight circle, uncertain, then rushed past the opening and out into the yard, knocking a trash can aside. Renee pulled Juno inside and shut the interior door. Juno had superficial cuts and bruising, but no major injuries. Renee had no physical injuries, but she described later a hollow feeling that persisted for weeks, an aftershock that came with every garage creak at night. Wildlife officers responded the next day. They documented torn birdseed, claw marks on the lower garage frame, and paw prints in dust near stored camping supplies. Officials concluded the attractant chain was clear, accessible seed, open entry, and a learned corridor behind the houses. They advised immediate changes: secure birdseed in bear-resistant containers, keep garage doors closed, remove outdoor pet food, and install motion-activated lighting. On the wildlife edge, your home can become an attractant site. Close access points and lock down small food sources like seed and trash. The next encounter takes us back to true isolation, where help exists, but only at the speed of radios and weather. In the Carpathian foothills of Romania, forest roads cut through mixed beech and spruce. In late summer, tourists drive into scenic pullouts for short breaks, assuming the road itself is a barrier. On August 18, 2025, at 6:05 p.m., the temperature was 21 degrees Celsius, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and the light was soft under a high cloud layer. Ioana Petrescu, 32, and Mihai Stan, 35, were traveling with two friends toward a mountain guest house. They stopped at a roadside clearing marked by a worn sign and a shallow ditch, about 12 kilometers from the nearest village. The vulnerability was simple. The pullout was bordered by thick brush. Visibility from the road was decent, but visibility into the trees was poor. The group set a small picnic on the tailgate: bread, cheese, fruit, and smoked sausages. They talked, laughed, and took photos. Their car doors were closed, but the trunk remained open. A brown bear, likely a young adult around 140 to 180 kilograms, 310 to 400 pounds, had been seen in the area frequently. Local guides later explained that bears in that corridor had become habituated to roadside food opportunities, trash, handouts, and leftovers. Habituation doesn't remove danger, it removes hesitation. The trigger was scent, combined with body language. Mihai tossed an apple core toward the ditch without thinking. The arc landed near the brush line, an unintended lure. The bear appeared almost immediately, stepping out with shoulders rolling and head low. The group froze. Ioana whispered for everyone to get in the car, but one friend, startled, backed away from the vehicle instead of toward it, creating separation. The escalation beat lasted about 1 minute. The bear moved toward the food first, then shifted attention to the moving person. Mihai shouted and clapped, trying to redirect. Ioana hit the car alarm. The horn blared, but in that moment the bear was within 10 meters. Mihai grabbed a metal thermos and slammed it against the tailgate repeatedly. The sharp metallic sound, close and irregular, seemed to break the bear's focus. It halted, reared slightly, and swatted the food off the tailgate. Then it dropped back to all fours, grabbed at a bag, and retreated a few steps toward the brush. That retreat created the opening the group needed. Ioana and the separated friend moved quickly back to the car. All four got inside and shut doors. The bear lingered in the clearing for another 30 to 40 seconds, then carried the bag toward the trees and disappeared. No one was injured, but the psychological effect lasted. A lasting awareness that a roadside stop can become an encounter site if food is present. Local officials later increased signage and added patrols during peak season. They also emphasized that tossing food, even small scraps, teaches bears that cars and people equal calories. Roads don't protect you. Food does the opposite. Keep it sealed, never toss scraps, and treat brush lines as close range. Across all 6 stories, the pattern is consistent. The animals weren't evil, and the people weren't reckless caricatures. The outcomes were shaped by overlaps, attractants, environmental conditions that reduced response time, fog, darkness, wind, terrain, and timing, dusk, dawn, seasonal hunger, or routine stops. Prevention looks boring on camera: sealed containers, closed doors, distance, noise readiness, traveling with awareness. But those boring steps are what keep a calm moment from becoming an emergency. In wild spaces and at their edges, safety isn't a feeling. It's a set of habits built before you need them.